Member for Vancouver-Fairview, you will respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to join the member for North Vancouver-Seymour in celebrating the successes as well as the potential of BC's film industry. I think this is good news in the last little while, the increases in production, and it makes up for the fact that there was actually quite a lull and drop-off in production a little over a year ago. It's good to see this industry come back. And just to give some sense of what the potential of this industry is for British Columbia, some time ago, a company called Nordicity did some market research on behalf of the Canadian Media Production Association and found that in Canada, and BC accounts for about 27% of Canadian production overall, in 1 year alone, the sector supported 262,700 direct and indirect jobs and generated $20.4 billion in GDP for Canada. 27% of that is substantial. BC Stats has found that $1 million in spending in the information and cultural industries increases GDP by 1.8 million, it creates 13 jobs, and it raises total taxes, federal, provincial, and municipal by $140,000. Now, it's interesting to note, because these are green jobs, it's a great industry for British Columbia, that in all three of these important metrics, this sector exceeds oil and gas, and particularly in the case of jobs, where the number of jobs created per $1 million invested is fivefold. I do have to say, Honourable Speaker, that sadly, this is the second throne speech in a row that fails to mention the important role of Creative B.C, notwithstanding the fact that the member for North Van-Seymour correctly identifies the important role that Creative B.C can play. Also, notwithstanding the fact that the distant location tax credit was a promise the Liberals made in the election and was introduced in this budget, another promise that was made and of which there is no mention was the promise to include post-production tax credits for digital animation or visual effects, despite the fact that the Committee on Finance and Government Services recommended that this be implemented in November. Let me talk for a moment about Creative B.C. It's a good organization, it's welcomed by the industry, it has great potential, but the BC government's investment in Creative B.C is less than 10% of Ontario's, and we know that in the creative sector, Ontario, while bigger than BC, certainly isn't 10 times as large. The Ontario Media Development Corporation in 2012 received $23 million from the provincial government. This money was earmarked for research and development, market research, for export marketing, as well as seed funding for domestic productions. The BC film industry made the relatively modest request of the BC government for $600,000 to $800,000 for a feature film seed fund. By comparison, Ontario has $4.3 million in a feature film seed fund. The purpose of the seed fund is to lever more investment. The BC government said no. A little over 25% of BC production spend is domestic production. Ontario, however, currently dominates domestic production in Canada. Last year, Ontario managed to weather the ebb and flow of film and TV production cycles by continuing to rely less on Hollywood shoots compared to years past and focusing more on domestic TV production. Domestic TV production contributed 56% of Ontario's total production activity. This helps stabilize the industry and grow a skilled workforce in Ontario, and it could do so in BC with a little bit more investment. The BC industry hopes to grow its share to stabilize employment and a homegrown industry here in BC. They think, and I agree, that investing in BC-owned companies across the creative sector ensures that there are opportunities for skilled British Columbians to find green, family-supporting employment at home. By giving Creative BC the tools to help seed investment and market our products, we will stabilize locally based production activity. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.